That's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe, now redone by Disney or Lucasfilm, whichever way you slice it, Legends. Today I have for you the penultimate story of the Bantam era, or kind of the ending to the Bantam era. Now, there is a few more stories that take place in the Bantam era, technically, like Young Jedi Knights and Junior Jedi Knights, the young adult series, the novel Survivor's Quest, and the novel Scourge. And then there's also a comic called Union, showing the marriage of Luke and Mara. But outside of that, this is kind of the culmination of the Bantam era. And this is, of course, Star Wars Specter of the Past, the first book in a Thrawn duology by Timothy Zahn, the man who truly started, I mean, I know it's backwards for you, but the man who truly started the Expanded Universe. It existed before him, but, you know, the Expanded Universe as we know it today truly came to be known because of the Thrawn trilogy, and here he is to conclude it with this story. I'll say it, I said it in the past, and I'll say it again. This did not need to be 2 books. This book drags in certain places. It really drags because it's setting up a whole lot for book 2. Now the next book is even longer. The next book is like 600 something pages, one of the longest books in the Expanded Universe. I think only book that really outweighs that is maybe Star by Star. The next book in this duology is one of the longest books in all of the EU, and it does not justify 600 pages. It is so unnecessary. And even here, with the usual like 300 something, so unnecessary, was not required. Which kind of sounds negative, but let me talk about some of the things I like. I mean, it's mostly positive. More positive than it was the last time I reviewed it, but I do have to reiterate again, this did not need to be a duology. That 600 pages for the next story could have just been this book and the second book compiled in one. There was no need for it, but we'll get to that when we get to that. That being said, we're almost at 20 years after the Battle of Yavin. The new Jedi Order is established. The New Republic is strong. The Empire is so weak at this point, it might as well be the Rebel Alliance from the original trilogy. They are the underdogs now. They are losing, and they've been losing for years and years and years and years and years. In fact, the last 2 trilogies, the Black Fleet Crisis, the New Rebellion, and the Corellian trilogy, it wasn't the Empire that was the threat. It was other things. The Empire's been kind of quiet. They haven't really been an issue. And you know who else realizes that? Our boy, Pelion. The book actually starts with Pelion. We get to see in that first chapter, as they're trying to work out this new stealth technology, to kind of, combat the New Republic. It doesn't work exactly as planned, and Pelion realizes it's over. Everything that we once were, everything that we are, we'll never rise to the prominence we once were. Not unless the New Republic destroys itself. But if I surrender, if the Empire surrenders, perhaps Pelion can keep the Empire he has left and keep the ideals alive. Because the thing about Pelion is he's such a good, righteous, and moral man, yet still stands by the beliefs of the Empire as opposed to the New Republic. Which is just really interesting. Pelion is absolutely top 5 male characters in the Expanded Universe. He's far above Thrawn, where he started. Zahn baffles me. Because he writes Allegiance and Choices of One, right? Where the characters feel so unlike themselves, at least for the time period they're supposed to be set in. during the Rebellion era. And he writes these boring stories that don't matter. Scoundrels, I don't care what my co-host Brennan says, Scoundrels is a fun novel, but it also pisses me off. But Allegiance and Choices of Water are bad. They're bad. And he doesn't understand characters. Like, Luke doesn't act like Luke, or as he should at that point in time. He acts whiny, which he isn't. Not in any other media, except for in Zahn's books, is Luke whiny during the Rebellion era. But then you get the Thrawn trilogy, where you read it and you're like, this is the sequel to the movies. These characters feel so in line. This feels exactly like what the trajectory of their characters would go after the films. And here again, after all the Bantam era books, after everything we've read, Han, Luke, and Leia feel like Han, Luke, and Leia. He really gets it here. I don't know why it's so hard for him to get it in the Rebellion era. It seems like he can only write these characters if all their character development has been done. If he's writing in an era where all their character development has been done, he just doesn't get it. Zahn also, early on in the book, seems to... What I appreciate about Zahn here, I mean, this is the end of an era. So, of course, Zahn references a lot of the Bantam era, which is really cool, like the Callista stuff gets mentioned. Now, the weird thing about the Callista stuff is that it's very clear in the Kevin J. Anderson and Hanley novels. In the Kevin J. Anderson one, she didn't want to be with Luke by the end of it because she could only access the Force by using the dark side. And she didn't feel like she was the right partner for Luke while she was struggling with that. So she bailed. Later on, she realizes that she's never going to have the Force again. And so she says, I can't be with you, Luke. It's mainly just an excuse because nobody wanted her to be with Luke. They wanted Mara. But that's the excuse that was given. But here, Zahn's trying to set something up. And that something is that Luke needs to fear his own power. Kind of like Superman, like, you have so much power, be careful how you use it. And so Zahn says the reason that Callista really left is because she feared Luke's power, which just kind of comes out of nowhere. But it is what it is. And then we have the Sith, not the Sith triumvirate like in KOTOR 2, but we have the Imperial triumvirate, basically. I want to make another thing. I need to make my piece here known. If you hate on the prequels and you like this book, you're a goddamn hypocrite. In every way sense of the freaking word, you are a hypocrite. And let me tell you why. You see this book? See all those pages? This whole book is political. This entire book the plot hinges on politics. I mean, I love it, but it hinges on it. What is the essential plot of this book, which I haven't even really gotten to yet? Well, the Kamas people, which are those kind of like bird-like people, information comes out from like way in the past that during the Empire's reign, the Bothans working for the Empire hurt. They like blew up a part of Kamas. And that information, it was a secret. Nobody knew. So that information just came out. So now people are upset. And it's not only upsetting the Kamas and the Bothans, because the Bothans that was like a separate, that was not all of us Bothans, that was the ones that were loyal to Palpatine. And then you got all these other alien races that are stirring up old resentments and arguments rising to get riled up with each other, right? It's a whole political crisis based off of this little thing, and who's trying to capitalize on this? Because also, word gets out across the Empire, of what's left of it, that Pelion wants to establish peace with the New Republic. So, what happens now? The Imperial Triumvirate, which is Dizra, something with a T, but an ex-Red Guard and an actor named Flim are working together to destabilize this peace and to further enrage the Kamas incident, to make this a bigger thing and to implode the New Republic and make it weaker and weaker and weaker so the Empire can take over. Also, quietly maybe pluck Pelion out of command so the Empire can be strong again. And it all hinges on politics, right? And then, one of the things that they're also trying to do with Flim, which is another thing I really hate about this book. So, early on in this book, Is it fun? Is it interesting? Yes. But what do we learn? We learn that there's an actor playing Thrawn. And that's kind of like their whole plan, is to make people fear Thrawn by using an actor to portray Thrawn. The issue with this is that we know that. So it's really frustrating reading near the end of this book, and also a good portion of the second book, which we'll get to later, and every character's fearing for this Thrawn's return and being scared and not knowing what's going to happen. But we do. We already know he's not real. This reveal that it was an actor should not have been revealed to like the beginning of the second book. If they're going to make 2 books, then that should have been revealed in the second book. We should have been led to believe that this was actually Thrawn. And since we already know from the get-go it's not, it's really, really frustrating watching the characters fear and struggle with the knowledge that Thrawn is alive when we know he's not. It's really frustrating. It really enrages me. Like, it's just so frustrating. And I think the story would have worked better if we didn't find that out, or maybe the final page of this book, we learned that Thrawn, maybe wipes off the makeup. It's an actor, it's Flynn. But because we know that from the get-go, that being said, the dynamics between the 3 are really interesting because they clearly all don't really like each other, but they're working to do this one goal. So we got all that going on. Luke is kind of jumping around trying to figure out what's going on. There's rumors of clones being used by pirate gangs, and he gets a vision that Mara's in trouble. That's going to set up stuff for book 2 because he's going to have to fall in love with Mara and marry her, also Hand of Thrawn stuff. We got to get ready for that. Zahn eats out the Solo kids, so we don't have to worry about them in the story. They're just gone. They're, off with Winter or something because he didn't want to write about them. So there's that. Of course, Leia and Han are trying to deal with this Kamasi crisis, and then we got Talon Card, and what's really cool, because Zahn is really good friends with Stackpole. He includes Corrin and Booster Tarek and Myrax, and introduces their child Valen. They have a child Valen. They'll have a second child later on. I don't know exactly when that happens, but they definitely have that kid by the time of Fate of the Jedi. But they have their first kid Valen right now, so that's really cool for them. Happy for Myrax and Corrin, which is, I think, first established here, so that's pretty cool. Also, we learned about Moonalist, which I don't know if this is the first time we've heard about Moonalist, but Moonalist, of course, is the Mun planet. Muns being Darth Plagueis' species, and if you watch the O3 Clone Wars, where that battle takes place, with the clone troopers and everything in the beginning of the season 1. So that's pretty cool. But overall, it's setting up a lot, Card is going to try to meet up with Cardass, who's nobody's heard from in a long time. Cardass being the guy that accompanied Thrawn in Outbound Flight, of course, which hasn't been written yet by the time that this book came out. That was a later book, but still, chronologically, we've already met Cardass. He hung out with Thrawn and everything in Outbound Flight back during the days of the prequels. But, that's something they're setting up too. Again, this book it's a huge setup for the second book, which is 600 pages long, which is insane to me. But that being said, I do enjoy the Sith. I keep saying Sith. I enjoy the Imperial Triumvirate. This small group of people trying to destabilize everything. I like the politics of everything. I like that the big crisis this time isn't the Empire. It's not some alien threat. It's not Thrak and Sal Solo. It's nothing like that. It's old wounds being brought up, being willing to destabilize the democracy that they currently have. And of course, Pelion is fantastic. Everything with Pelion is absolutely gold. Everything with Pelion is fantastic. In fact, the final chapter of this book shows Pelion in all of his genius, that he really picked up things from Thrawn and surpassed Thrawn, I personally believe, in intelligence, in wisdom, and being a fan favorite. Because one of the things that the Imperial Triumvirate are trying to do, they're trying to make Pelion believe that the New Republic is backstabbing them. So they get a bunch of Corellian corvettes to go and attack, like the Chimera, because he's supposed to be meeting up with General Beliabus from the Thrawn trilogy to establish a peace treaty, or to at least get into talks about it. And so the Triumvirate's like, well, let's sabotage that. Let's have it. It can't be too obvious. It can't be New Republic ships, because then they'll know that, they wouldn't be that obvious. So let's get some Corellian cruisers, You know, they're just saying like we got to make it not seem super obvious. You know, and so Pellion's like, I don't know. From everything I know about Garn Bell Elbis, he's an honorable man. He would not sneak attack me like this. And then he goes, okay, let's do a move that I know General Elbis did on us 10 years ago during the Thrawn crisis. Back when Thrawn was still around. I remember what he did. So, if it's really General Elbis, if I pull this move, he'll see it coming from a mile away. They don't. And that's how he knows for a fact it's not General Elbis. But you can see his commanding officer questioning him in his leadership, but not arguing, not doing it, obeying, but looking scared. And Pelion being like, I remember that. Because that's exactly how I was with Thrawn. And I was in your shoes. I know how that feels. But I'm confident enough in myself to believe that I know what I'm talking about now. I believe I know what's up. And, you know, he proves it. And it's another reason why I just absolutely love Pelion as a character. Yeah, there's a lot of good moments in here, but the biggest issue with this first book is it is primarily set up for the finale of the Bantam era. But we'll see how I feel about the finale when we get to it. But yeah, this is Specter the Past. You know, overall, a really good start to the finale, to this era of Star Wars before we get to the dark and gritty new Jedi Order. But I definitely enjoyed it more the second time through than I did the first time I read it, because the first time I found a lot of it boring. And there still are bits of it that, it's not boring, but it drags, and it needs to move along, but it doesn't, because it's just padding out runtime so it could do the majority of the big things in the second book, which is frustrating. It really didn't need to be 2 books. We could have one epic, like 700-page book to conclude it, but we got a duology. And because of that, this is a lot of setup and a lot of dragging along, so that way the second book can do most of the heavy lifting. It is what it is. That being said, if you're reading the Expanded Universe and you're trying to get to New Jedi Order and everything, this is essential reading. This is an end of an era, you know? It's like watching 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and not watching 6. You have to. If you've been reading the Bantam era, you have to finish with this. It's essential. Survivor's Quest, not as much. Scourge, it's not essential at all. But this is. You need to read this if you're going to go through the Expanded Universe and read everything. This is one of your essential readings. No matter the complaints you may have with it. But that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, share it a ton. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. May the Force be with you.